Hi everyone, today we're going to continue talking about angles and parallel lines. Our objectives for today are that students will be able to use theorems to determine the relationships of specific pairs of angles and use algebra to find angle measures. Let's get started. Alright, so let's establish some rules about parallel lines cut by a transversal. So we can say that if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then each pair of corresponding angles are congruent. Each pair of alternate interior angles is also congruent. Each pair of alternate exterior angles is congruent. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. And then, as we learned in the first chapter, vertical angles are always congruent to each other, and a linear pair are always supplementary. Alright, so let's review that one more time. Corresponding angles are always congruent. So if they're in the same position and on the same side of the transversal, they are congruent. Alternate interior angles. So if they're on the inside of our two lines and they're on alternate sides of the transversal, they are congruent. Alternate exterior angles. If they're on the outside of our two lines and they're on alternate sides of the transversal, they are congruent. Consecutive interior angles. If they're on the same side of the transversal and they're on the inside of our two lines, they are supplementary. Alright, and then vertical angles are always congruent, linear pair are always supplementary. Based on this information, something that we can do is that if we know one angle measure, we can find all of them if we follow these rules. So let's see an example of this. Alright, so example number 1, we're given that the measure of angle 1 is 65 degrees. Alright, so angle 1 is 65 degrees. We want to find the measure of each missing angle, and we have to give a reason. So what we can do is we can say that angle 2 is 115 degrees, because we know that angle 2 is a linear pair to angle 1. Alright, and if it's a linear pair, that means it's supplementary. So all we did was do 180 minus 65, and that gave us 115. So angle 2 is 115. Alright. Angle 3. Well, we know angle 3 is a vertical angle to angle 1. So if it's a vertical angle to angle 1, it's the same, it's congruent. So angle 3 is also 65 degrees. We can label that on our diagram. Now angle 4. We know angle 4 is a vertical angle to angle 2. So our reasoning for knowing how many degrees it is because if it's a vertical angle to angle 2, angle 4 has to also be 115. Now angle 5. Angle 5 would be corresponding to angle 1 because angle 5 and angle 1 are in the same position and they're on the same side of the transversal. So because angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding, alright, so we say angle 5 is corresponding to angle 1, it has to be congruent. So it is 65 degrees as well. And then angle 6 is corresponding to angle 2. Therefore, it's congruent to angle 2, so it has to also be 115. Alright, we could also say it's alternate interior with angle 4, or we could say it's consecutive interior with angle 6. That's other ways we can find out that angle 6 is 115 degrees, okay? Then angle 7, the measure of angle 7. So we know angle 7 is going to be alternate exterior angles with angle 1. And we know alternate exterior angles are congruent, so angle 7 is 65 degrees as well, because we know it's alternate exterior angles to angle 1. And last but not least, angle 8 would be alternate exterior with angle 2. So it has to be congruent and has to be 115 degrees as well. It's also vertical to angle 6, so we could have said that too. That's how we know it's congruent and it's also 115. So as you can see, once we find one of them, we can find all of them, as long as we know that our two lines are parallel and they're cut by a transversal. So if we didn't see these arrows right here, we couldn't assume all these things. So these rules only apply if the two lines are parallel and it's cut by a transversal. All right, example number 3. So example number 3, we're given that the measure of angle 5 is 82 degrees. All right, so if angle 5 is 82, we want to find all the rest of them. So first thing we know is that angle 8 has to be vertical angles with angle 5. So angle 8 has to also be 82. So we can just fill that one in. And then we know what is corresponding to angle 8. Well, angle 7 is corresponding and angle 9 is corresponding to angle 8. So we can say 7 and 9 are also 82 degrees. Now we also know some of these angles are corresponding to angle 5. Angle 4 is corresponding and angle 6. So 4 and 6 have to also be 82 degrees. Then what else do we know? Well, let's see. We know that angle 1 and 7 would be a linear pair, right? They would form a linear pair, so therefore they're supplementary. So if they add up to 180, we would do 180 minus 82, and then we know that angle 1 is, 98 degrees. Okay, so angle 1 is 98 degrees. And we know angle 2 is corresponding to angle 1, so it's also 98 degrees. And angle 3 is corresponding to angles 1 and 2, so it's also 98 degrees. Then we know angle 1 and 10 are vertical angles, so angle 10 has to be 98 degrees. Angle 11 is corresponding to angle 10, so it has to be 98 degrees. And angle 12 is also corresponding to 10 and 11, so it has to also be 98 degrees. So if you know your rules for the measures of angles, if they're cut by parallel lines and a transversal, you know one of them, you can easily find all of them. And then just want to emphasize again, the only reason these rules work is because we have the arrows right here that show us all of these lines are parallel and it's cut by a single transversal. Alright, so I want you guys to try example 5 on your own. Something I want to point out to you is that the only two lines that are parallel here are this line and this line because of these two arrows. So these two lines are parallel. This is one transversal and this is another transversal. Alright, so use that information. You're given one angle on this transversal and you're given another angle on this transversal. Find all the missing measures. When you come back, I'll have the answers written on your screen and we will go through it together. So go ahead and pause your video now and give this one a try. Alright, so here are the answers to example number 5. So first thing, you were given that the measure of angle 7 is 38. So we know that this one is 38. Then what we want to do is look for all of the vertical angles and corresponding angles to angle 7. So 5 is a vertical angle, therefore it's congruent. And 15 is a corresponding angle to angle 7, so it's also congruent. And 13 is a vertical angle to 15, so it is also congruent. So 5, 13, 15, and 7 are all 38 degrees. Then we know that angle 7 and angle 8 are a linear pair. So in order to find angle 8, we would do 180 minus 38, and that gives us 142. So angle 8 is 142. And angle 6 is a vertical angle to angle 8, therefore it is congruent and also 142. Angle 14 is corresponding and congruent, and 16 is vertical to 14. So 6, 8, 14, and 16 are all 142 degrees. Now we've found all the measures of the angles on this transversal. Then we want to go to this transversal. We're given that the measure of angle 10 is 102. Well, 10 and 12 are vertical angles, so they're congruent. 2 is corresponding to 10, so it is congruent, and 2 and 4 are vertical, so it is also 102. So 2, 4, 10, and 12 are all 102 degrees. Then we know that angle 10 and 11 are a linear pair. So therefore, they add up to 180. So 180 minus 102 gives us 78. 11 is 78, well 9 is a vertical angle to 11, so they are congruent. 9 and 1 are corresponding, so they are congruent. And 1 and 3 are vertical angles, so they are congruent. So 1, 3, 9, and 11 are all 78 degrees. And we just found all of the missing measures in this example problem. If you have any questions on this, call me over so I can help you. Otherwise, let's move on. All right, I know number 6 is an even, but it's one that's a little bit special, and I wanted to be sure to do this one with you because I'm going to teach you a little trick that'll help make problems that look like this a lot easier. So let's do this one together. If we're given the measure of angle 2 is 41, so we know that this angle right here is 41 degrees, all right, and the measure of angle 5 is 94, and the measure of angle 10 is 109, and we want to find all the rest of the missing angles. So first thing we want to do is look for those linear pairs, all right? So we know 4 and 5 are a linear pair. Therefore, in order to find angle 4, we would just do 180 minus 94, and we would get that angle 4 is 86, all right? So angle 4 is 86 degrees. So look for those linear pairs first, all right? Then we know that this line and this line are parallel, and this would be our transversal. So angle 2 and angle 9 would be alternate interior angles, and therefore they would be congruent. So angle 9 is 41 as well. Then next thing we know is we know that angles 8, 9, and 10 all form a straight angle. All right, they all add up to 180. So to find measure of angle 8, we would add 9 and 10 together, and we would get 150. And then 180 minus 150 would give us that angle 8 is 30 degrees. All right, so angle 8 is 30. And we write that in. Now, to keep finding all these missing measures, there's a little trick that will make life so much easier for you, all right? Now, we really won't learn this till next chapter, but I figure why not teach it to you now if it'll make life easier. So it has something to do with triangles. So something we need to know is if we have a triangle, all of the angles inside of a triangle have to add up to 180 degrees. So if we add up all the angles of a triangle, it equals 180 degrees. So what I want you to do is look at this figure and look for the triangles. So we see a triangle right here, right? That's a triangle. Angle 3, 4, and 9 are all the angles of that triangle. Well, we know that angle 4 and 9 are 86 and 41. So to easily find angle 3, we can just do 86 plus 41. We get 127. 180 minus 127 is going to give us 53. All right, so angle 3 is 53 degrees. All right, makes life so much easier if we know that one little fact. Even though there's other ways of doing it, this is the simplest way to do it, and it's still geometrically correct because this is a geometric fact. All right, this is something we learned in geometry, that the angles of all the angles in a triangle add up to 180. So why not make these diagrams a little bit easier? All right, now that using this same idea, we can find angle 7. All right, because if we look at this triangle, so that would be what, angles 2, 7, and 8. We know that 2 is 41, and we know that 8 is 30. So 41 plus 30 gives us 71. 180 minus 71 gives us 109. So angle 7 is 109 degrees. Then if we know angle 7 is 109, angle 6 and 7 are a linear pair. So we would do 180 minus 109, and that would give us 71 for angle 6. All right, and then to find angle 1, and we know 2 and 3, we know 1, 2, and 3 have to add up to 180. So we can just do 53 plus 41, add them together, and subtract from 180, and we get that angle 1 is 86. All right, so this one little fact about triangles will really help you if you see a complex diagram like this. All right, so now we're going to throw some algebra into the mix. So we need to know our rules for parallel lines cut by a transversal, and then we're going to use algebra to help us find the value of missing variables, okay? So we are given that L is parallel to M. So if L is parallel to M and it is cut by this transversal, these would be corresponding angles, and we know that corresponding angles are congruent, all right? So if corresponding angles are congruent, the measure of this angle is equal to the measure of this angle. So therefore, we can say 5x minus 2 equals 58. Now it's just algebra from here, and we're solving for x. So we add 2 to both sides. We get these cancel out, and we get that 5x equals 60. Divide by 5. So x equals 12. And we're done with this problem. All right, number 3. So we know that L and M are parallel cut by a transversal. And I know this one's a little tricky to see, but the 125 is pointing to this angle right here. And the 7x minus 1 is pointing to this angle right here. Those would be alternate interior angles. All right, and we know that alternate interior angles are congruent to each other. So therefore, we can say 7x minus 1 equals 125. All right, now it's just algebra. Add 1 to both sides. These will cancel out. 7x equals 126. Divide both sides by 7. 7's cancel out, and x equals, 126 divided by 7 is 18. So x equals 18, and you're done with this one. All right, number 5. So the two angles we're given here are this one and this one. Those would be alternate exterior angles, and we know alternate exterior angles are congruent. Therefore, we can set the measures equal to each other. So we can say that 8x minus 77 equals 3x plus 38. Now it's just algebra. We want to move all the x's to one side. These will cancel out. Move all the constants, or move all of our numbers to the other. These will cancel out, so we're left with 5x on this side and 115 on this side. Divide both sides by 5. Those cancel out, and x equals 23. All right, so I want you guys to try number 7. Identify what the two angles are that you're given. So just in case you can't tell, 5x plus 75 goes with that angle. 13x minus 21 goes with that angle right there. So what is the relationship between those two angles, and how can we write an equation to represent this and solve for x? So go ahead and try this on your own. Pause your video. When you come back, I'll have the answer written on your screen, and we'll go through it together. So go ahead and pause your video now. All right, so you should have gotten that x equals 12. So these two angles would be alternate interior angles, therefore they are congruent. So we can set the measures equal to each other. Then we're moving all the constants to one side, all the numbers to the other, all the variables to one side, all the constants to the other, or our numbers to the other. Then we end up with 8x equals 96. Divide both sides by 8, and x equals 12. All right, if you have any questions, raise your hand, call me over so I can help you. Otherwise, let's move on. All right, so number 9, throwing two variables at you now. All right, so if you look at this example, you see that you've got some x's and you've got a y. All right, the first thing you want to do is look at the x's. Look at the one where you have two of them. We have two x's, and we want to look at those angles and identify what is the relationship between those angles, because we want to solve for x first. So we see that these two angles would be alternate interior. Okay, therefore they are congruent. So how we can solve for x is by setting them equal to each other. So we would say 8x minus 31 equals 6x plus 3. Subtract 6x from both sides. Add 31 to both sides. These will cancel. You're left with 2x equals 34. Divide by 2. x equals 17. All right. Now you found x. What we can do is go back and plug it in. So plug it into either one because we know they're congruent. So if we get 6x plus 3, we're plugging in 17 for x. We get 102 plus 3, which gives us 105, right? So this angle right here is 105 degrees. And then we know that this angle and this angle would be consecutive interior angles. And we know that consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Therefore, they add up to 180 degrees. So what we want to do is we want to say 5y plus 35 plus 105 equals 180. All right, let me zoom out so we've got a little bit more space here. And then we're just solving for y. So we want to combine like terms, and we get 5y plus 140 equals 180. Subtract 140 from both sides. These cancel out. You're left with 5y equals 40. Divide by 5. Y equals 8. You just solved for x and y, so you're done. All right, 13. First thing we want to do is look at our x's and look at the angles that have x's in them and ask ourselves, how do those two angles relate? Well, those two angles would be consecutive interior, and consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Therefore, the sum of those two angles is 180 degrees. So to write an equation that represents this, we would say 18x minus 44 plus 8x minus 10 equals 180. Then we want to combine like terms on the left side of the equal sign. So we would do 18x plus 8, and that gives us 26x. Then negative 44 minus 10 is going to give us negative 54. All right, then we want to add 54 to both sides. These will cancel out. You're left with 4, 3, 234 over here, 26x over there. Then we want to divide both sides by 26. And I need my calculator for this. X equals 9, all right? So x equals 9. Now we solved for x, so what we can do is go back and plug it in. So 8, let's see, if we're plugging it into this one right here, 8 times 9 gives us 72, minus 10 gives us 62. All right, so this one right here is 62 degrees. And we know that this angle and this angle are a linear pair, which means they are supplementary and add up to 180. So we know that our 62 degree angle plus 13y minus 38 equals 180. All right. Now we want to combine like terms. So 62 minus 38 is going to give us, what is that? 62 minus 38. Wow, can't do it in my head. So 424, right? Then plus 13y equals 180. Subtract 24 from both sides. Then we get, need some more space here, 13y equals 156. Divide both sides by 13. And y equals 12. All right, so we solved for x and y in this problem, and we're done. All right, so I want you guys to try number 13 on your own. When you come back, I'll have the answer written on your screen, and we'll go through it together. So go ahead and pause your video now. All right, so you should have gotten that x is 21 and y is 15. How did we get that? So first thing we know is that these two angles right here are consecutive interior angles, therefore they're supplementary, and the sum of those two angles is 180. So we add them together and set it equal to 180. Then we combine like terms, so 3x plus 6x, negative 16 and 7. We get 9x minus 9 equals 180. Move the 9 to the other side, divide by 9, x equals 21. Then we also know that this angle and this angle are vertical angles, therefore they are congruent. So we can set their measures equal to each other. Then we know that x equals 21, so we want to plug 21 in for x. We get that 6 times 21 plus 7 is 133, still equals 11y minus 32. Add 32 to both sides, divide both sides by 11, and y equals 15. All right, if you have any questions on this one, please call me over so I can help you. Otherwise, let's move on to our final example. All right, I know we're doing an even, we're doing 16, we're not doing 15, but that's because it's a special one and I wanted to be sure to do one like this with you. All right, so 16. First thing you want to do is look for those x's, all right? Where do our x's fall and can we use any of that information? So we see that our x, we've got 12x plus 1 right here, all right? And we know that 12x plus 1 is a vertical angle with this angle right here. So these two angles have to be congruent. Then we also know that this angle and this angle would be corresponding. So because all three of these angles are going to be the same, we can say 15x minus 26 equals 12x plus 1. All right, that one was a little unique. This is why I wanted to do this one with you. All right, now we're just solving for x. So subtract 12x from both sides. Add 26 to both sides. We get 3x equals 27. Divide by 3. X equals 9. All right, now we can go back and plug it into either one so that we can solve for that angle. So 12 times 9 gives you 108, and then 108 plus 1 gives you 109. All right, so this angle right here is 109. This angle right here is also 109, and this one over here is 109. Now, if we know this one is 109, this one's 28, and we see that this is a triangle right here, what do we know about all the angles of a triangle? All right, we learned that they have to add up to 180. So we can say that 28 plus 109 plus 4y minus 9 has to equal 180 because all of the angles inside of a triangle have to add up to 180. So now we're just solving for y, all right? So 28 plus 109, and then minus 9 over here is going to give us 128, and it's still 4y plus this equals 180. Subtract 128 from both sides. These will cancel out. We're left with 4y equals 52. Divide both sides by 4. 52 divided by 4 gives us 13. So y equals 13. All right, we solved for x and y, so we're done. All right, so I hope you learned a thing or two about angles and parallel lines today. If you have any questions, call me over so I can help you. Otherwise, look to the board to see what to do next, and I hope that you have a great day.